Hello.
Hello, May-ling. Hope everything is well.
Everything's going good.
Thank you so much for being a part of this series. I assume that the camera is on.
The camera is on. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, great. Anyhow, thanks for being part of this career day talk. Students are really excited to hear about how to become an artist. And so it's great to have you join us and tell us about your experience. But before we begin, I guess people don't know anything about you yet. So maybe you could introduce yourself and tell me where you grew up, your kind of background, education, hobbies. I don't know, favorite eating place, whatever. What was your best? Yeah, anything.
Okay, so pretty much I have to tell you all about me. So,
Yes.
My name is May-ling Martinez. If you guys hear a slight accent, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised there and then moved here after I finished a bachelor there. And I've been residing in San Diego, in California. I call San Diego my second place, or my home base. I have a bachelor's in communication and visual art. And after moving here, I have a master's of fine art specializing in sculpture from San Diego State University. I'm obsessed about looking for objects and materials. I'm a practicing artist. And I'm a professor at different colleges here in San Diego. So, I don't know. What else are you curious about today?
Well, what made you move to San Diego?
That's an interesting and unusual story. My dad is an engineer, and around 96, he had an opportunity to move here to San Diego to work in Tijuana. He always worked for an American company in Puerto Rico, so they needed someone that had the knowledge of that company, but that was Hispanic to start the company. Most of the Puerto Ricans that you will meet in San Diego, a lot of it have a connection with the military, but our case was a little bit different. So that opened the opportunity for me to move here. I was looking to pursue a master. I wasn't sure yet around that time, and eventually I decided to move here and pursue my artist career.
Oh, fantastic! And May-ling, it doesn't sound altogether Puerto Rican.
That's the least Puerto Rican name that you will find. My mom is a little bit eccentric. I wish
okay.
I wish I had like a better explanation. I think she read that name in a novel or something like that, and she really liked it. But it's the least Puerto Rican name that you will find, and then with the super Latino last name like Martinez, great combination.
I've always wanted to ask, because I thought, well, Chinese,
Uh-huh.
Mexican, a Japanese Bolivian. I don't, I have no
I
idea,
know.
But okay, now I know. So it was just, your mom was a very creative woman, also.
Yes, I think I should probably just make up a better story, to be honest with you.
You're abducted by gypsies.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, great. So, can you describe your practice?
Yeah. So my practice is I call myself sometimes a maker, or I have a mix between visual arts, that is my background, and sculpture. And I use sculpture very loosely. I think sculpture is an umbrella for me to work with mixed media. Um, what I usually do is I might have an idea, and after I have that idea, I try to visualize what will be the best medium to convey that idea. So a lot of my practice is doing collaging, drawing, and also I work with a lot of mixed media, found objects. So the combination between the two, I think, is the method of combining what is already existing. I don't prioritize between 2D or 3D. I constantly moving back and forward. I think my 2D work, painting and collages, inform the 3D work and how I think about objects and information, and vice versa. I'm working with sculptures and I always go back to the two-dimensional work.
And you know, some of the people that are listening, they're going to be thinking that sculpture is like marble, wood, or you know, metal. Maybe they've never heard of this found object. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So sometimes when I'm trying to explain what I do, I tell people, so I don't have access in my backyard to a quarry and to look for big stones or anything like that. And that's sometimes historically the idea that we have about sculpture. But what I have access is to a vast quantity of found objects, meaning like I go to the thrift stores, I go to the swap meet, and I look for objects that have some sort of history to them, and I take them apart or change them somehow to make something new. So for me, sculpture is pretty much anything that is three-dimensional, that I can carry, that I can put together. It doesn't have to be necessarily limited to rocks or marble or traditional materials. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that that's what I have access to. Sometimes I call myself or my fellow sculpture artists like we are the Home Depot artists. We have access to these stores and the do-it-yourself store and all this stuff around the suburbs. And I like work to materials because we consume a lot. We consume so many objects that objects inform my life since I wake up to when I go to bed. So that's what makes sense to me. I just take what is around me that is three-dimensional and make art with it.
So a person that likes to go to the thrift store should be a mixed media artist, is that what you're saying? Or a found object artist?
Probably. It's gonna lend itself to that.
Now, were you always a creative person, or what made you get into the creative arts?
I was creative, but I had no idea about the art world or even the potential or what being an artist was. We didn't go often to museums or anything like that, so it was something new, but I always had an incline to make things with my hands. From paper cutouts, I have two brothers, so I always was taking their toys and objects, and we were like combining and putting things together. So that I think I always had that curiosity of building or taking things out of context and mixing them up. So that curiosity, or I think art a lot of time is a way of processing information. So that was there. Eventually, I became aware of the potential of communicating as an artist, and I loved it. It kind of like merged together and makes sense.
Was there like an aha moment that you were like, oh my God, I can do this and be an artist and make a career out of it?
Okay, there was an aha moment. It kind of like developed little by little, but the aha moment is I graduated high school and I didn't have specific vision of what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to pursue a career and I wanted to do like higher learning. So I started taking my general ed classes, and I took the art of appreciation class, and it's like a general class, a little bit of art history, and then you learn to look at art and the dialogue and materials. And I had a wonderful professor in my university in Puerto Rico, and he took us on a field trip, and we were able to visit a couple of the local schools, and that really gave me an insight of what being an artist was, and also to the medium. And that kind of like piqued my curiosity, and that started, I was able to see that it was something accessible, and that curiosity that I had, I can probably like funnel it to art making. I still was very naive about that, but something happened there with that class that I became aware of the potential of art. And eventually I visited a couple of art schools and found a university in Puerto Rico that I started taking, I transferred and I started taking art classes.
And so you said your dad was an engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and you're obviously an ethnic background. Like it's sometimes it's hard to become an artist just regularly.
Yeah.
But when you have have an ethnic background, you are a woman. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things, biases that are placed in pressures to go do other things. Did you ever get any of that kind of feedback from people where they were kind of like, oh, maybe you should go do something, that you can make money with? Or
Support and being a first artist in a family that we are not artists and we haven't had that many contact with art. So I was very lucky that my family is very supportive. I am very lucky that they wanted us to go to college and pursue a career. My parents didn't pressure me or have that extra preoccupation of like guiding me towards one area. They, again, as a family, we have discovered what an artist is and what it entitles. We were clueless about the profession, so they were. And also, I think I didn't have too much pressure because I started my career as an artist under communication. So in Puerto Rico, communication and the visual arts were more into like TV and ads and things like that. It was a process to realize that my passion was to be a visual artist and more something that has to do like more with fine art and concept more than communication. And as I got more opportunities, I think my family saw the investment that I have, and they have been very, very supportive. I feel very lucky.
Yeah, so you did the sneakaroo. You went like, oh, I'm going to be a communications major.
Yeah.
And I went, no, actually, I'm a visual artist.
Yes, and it worked out perfectly. And also, like, I was very lucky because I was very naive. I didn't know what a professional artist life entitles, but I was very lucky that after I graduated already with a bachelor, and to be honest, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I could pursue probably a graphic designer career or a designer career or a fine artist career. It was like very separate when I went to school, and it was barely starting the graphic design and all the computer programs. So after I moved here, I was trying to make up my mind and figure out what was my dialogue, what I like. And I moved to San Diego and I moved to the suburbs. Everything looks the same. And I decided like, okay, I want to start integrating, being a part of a community. And I, with a bachelor degree, started taking classes in a community college close to my house just to connect and practice my English. And I saw community colleges as a very feasible and direct way to take classes that I didn't have the opportunity to take when I was doing my bachelor's, and also to get access to knowledge and equipment. So I already have a bachelor at that point on visual art, and it was mainly painting, photography, a little bit of the basics. But I still was trying to figure out what my voice was. And I also believe that there's one thing to be a student, and after you graduate, you start developing your voice, a whole nother different practice. At this point, I see a lot of students that have an awareness of what piques their curiosity and their voice, but that took me a while. So going back to college and to the community college, I took a lot of classes and started getting access to what sculpture was, to what installation art was, and that really opened my view of what I can do with art. I didn't have to be specifically a painter or a sculptor or a graphic designer. I realized that I can merge all that knowledge and I can do different things at the same time. I was able to meet great professors. One of the great things of the California system, in a way, is that It's affordable, and you can might be taking classes in a college with people that are teaching at San Diego State or other colleges. So I was lucky to work until some great professors that became mentor, like Anna O'Kane, and they are practicing artists. So all of us that are teacher now, we're practicing artists. So that was a way for me to know about the art world and what it takes, making a portfolio, developing not only art pieces as a student, but really start developing little by little a body of work so I could apply to grad school and things like that. Taking a photography class that is tailored for me to prepare a portfolio, writing about my work. All of those things, I was able to do it by taking some classes at a community college. Any other way, I probably will not have that access, even with a bachelor.
And how did you finance all of this?
Okay, financial aid. My parents were supportive because I was able to live with them here, and that was huge because I know California is very expensive, but I kept my expenses very low, very low. You know, I didn't have I kept my finances low, but just affording things if I had the money to, working side jobs and things like that. But one huge thing was going to a community college and a state school. That made it affordable for me because I didn't want it to graduate and have excessive loans and things like that. That was a preoccupation for me. But taking some classes also through community college and then transferring and applying to a state school, that really helped.
And how did you, because I imagine you're showing your work, and many students are like, okay, well, I made the work and I want to show the work, but what's the foot in the door? How did you get to start showing your work?
Okay, that's a great question. How you start showing your work? So the first part is being a part of the community. You can always approach galleries and do a cold kind of like connection, but the best thing is either to go back, research a lot of places, and ask yourself, is this a gallery that I want to show my work? Does it have the same principles? Meaning, is it a contemporary gallery? Is it a gallery that like to showcase artists that are more craft based? So what I would do is just go to art shows, and then from there you can start making connections. We're very lucky that here in San Diego we have a thriving and a very supportive art community. There's a lot of different venues, so it's hard to know what's going on, but a good place is start with the colleges or the art school. We have 2 art schools here with grad programs, so we can start from there. There's a thriving scene. There's a lot of alternative spaces. So what I will do is just to go to all the openings and start knowing the venues and then trying to make a contact from there. I know it's hard when you're a student to start exhibiting, so my suggestion is if there's no places for you to exhibit, make your own places. I have made, when I started out, I exhibit in coffee shops, in frame shops. I did a lot of shows in alternative spaces. I made alternative spaces. Sometimes artists, if there's an empty place, you can like approach them and do a proposal, or maybe rent a space for a month and get together with some friends, pay that rent, and showcase your work. It just, if the venue is not existent or you don't have access to it, that should not be a limitation. And I learned through other artists is that if there's not a venue, I can maybe talk about not being a scene or not a venue, but at the end of the day, what can I do? So being proactive as an artist is very important, and more when you're starting.
Yeah, I remember, for my grad show, I went around to real estate agents and called them up and said, "Hey, do you know any art supporters that have an empty building?"
Uh-huh.
And one of the guys called me back and he said, "Give me $1 because I need it for insurance so that you're renting the space, but you can have it for the month because I'm doing nothing with it, and $1." So I had a space to show for $1. It's pretty neat.
That's great.
Yeah. What do you do about your studio? I mean, do you have a home studio, or how do you make work?
Okay. Another great question. What's my studio, my living situation, how I make work? In the beginning, where I live and where my studio is, it has been like two different places. And I have rented some humble studios. My first studio was my parents' garage. So they have a 3-car garage. I parted one, reorganized everything, and I just work in a little area. After that, when I graduated out of grad school and the reality hit that I needed a studio, I just checked Craigslist and the newspaper, and I found an industrial area in Spring Valley. And my first studio was a little small office, like one of those prefab office behind a contractor's lot. So I think I paid $125. This place was really small. I think maybe it was 7 by 14. Yeah, and I just make do with that space. I remember that it was so small that I had my first big solo show in a renowned gallery here in downtown, and all my work I made it here. I was building these big panels, Yoshi, that they were like 4 by 8 feet long, and if I wanted to I was working on 2 huge ones and 2 medium-sized ones. For me to start working in another one, I had to literally take the panel out of my studio and then walk another one in. So that's the reality of it. And sometimes, because at that point I was working at different schools, sometimes I had to stay after teaching, and sometimes working in the tables or in the yard. Sometimes I went to friends' property. Just whatever I had to do to get and make the work. After that, I was able to find a great space in downtown San Diego in the outskirts that is called Space for Art, and I've been a part of that for 10 years now. I just, not even a year ago, moved from the studio to a work-live studio with the same group. And I've been really lucky. I know it's very challenging to get spaces here in San Diego, but it's a matter of looking and maybe a little bit of naivete and being persistent. So, I'm working right now in a work-live situation. So we're in the second floor of a building, and I share the space with 4 artists, and we all have a room that is our studio. So this is my studio. I have my working table for 3-dimensional work, and I have other areas when I work with 2D. I have a stairs, and on the second floor are my living quarters. So I'm very lucky. However, it was a raw space. It was very simple and humble space. So I had to adapt it to my needs as an artist. But I've been really lucky that I'm here and I'm living and working in the same area. If I will not have found this place, I will probably be renting an apartment or any place with a garage, and will make their garage my studio.
Yeah, my friend, had a gallery called Lucky Tackle Gallery.
Yeah.
He made it into a live workspace as well as a gallery, and it used to be a tackle shop, so that's why it ended up being called Lucky Tackle Gallery.
Yeah, it's very common to have to make our own spaces, and sometimes even when you're trying to rent a garage, people sometimes think that you're gonna make a business out of the garage or something like that. So they're hesitant. So we have to be persistent.
Well, that sounds like a common kind of theme that keeps coming back. Is that if you really want to become, not just doing this as a hobby, but as a profession, that persistence really is very important.
Yeah, one of the most important things is being persistent, because even though there's a great community and there are mentors, you're really making your own way. In a way, you have so much freedom because it's a creative arena that you're the only one that decide to really commit and make that work. There's no one gonna be kind of like pushing you to make the work. There's no one gonna be exhorting you to do anything. It's really an area that you need to be passionate about, and no one can give you that. You can have the talent, you can have the schooling, but you need to make your own structure. And also, from looking for studios to live, where to make the work, customizing a place for your needs as a studio, looking for shows, you have to take initiative. I think that's one of the most important things as an artist.
Now, do you supplement your artistic practice with other things for income?
That's a great question. Yes, I do. I visualize it as two things. I have two jobs. One of them is being an artist, and sometimes it's feasible and sometimes it's not economically feasible. It depends on projects. And I have another job that is teaching. So a lot of artists, for a lot of us, that's a way to have an income. So I work at 2 or 3 different colleges in the area. So that's one of my jobs. And my other job is being a practicing artist.
And is that a good fit? Is that a good, do they complement each other?
Yes, it does in a way, because, for example, I have specific hours that I have to work, and then I have several open time. So that's good. That gives me the freedom to make the work. It can be a challenge too, because at the same time with teaching, there's a lot of responsibilities that are out of the times when I'm technically working and prepping. So it's a matter of balancing, like making that own balance. I think for some of us, sometimes we have the freedom to travel during summer. It can be challenging because teaching is almost a career of love in a certain way. But at the same time, it gives me a lot of freedom. Plus, there's a lot of things that are not obvious. But as an art teacher, you get to connect with your peers. So I have access to other artists that are doing the same, and resources also. I think that's important. And also, if you're a professor, most of the time you should be a practicing artist. I think making work, you get that knowledge and bring it to the classroom. And I think one thing informs the other. Having and coexisting in a way with a community of artists that are teachers, you cross paths and you are kind of in the loop of what's happening in the community.
What's your dream as an artist? Is it exhibiting in bigger places, or what's the ultimate goal for an artist?
The ultimate goal for me right now is to first of all, to continue my artist practice. I think just deciding and being able to work teaching, but also to make new work and explore things that get me to the studio, investigating, keeping that creative curiosity going. For me, that's the priority. It's like super basic. Right now I'm deciding to develop the work, and I know I'm in contact with different venues, so I want to have a couple of solo shows hopefully the next year. So I'm in the talk with a couple of new venues to do that. Also considering starting doing more artists in residencies and traveling more. That's something that I haven't fully explore. I had one in Tijuana 2 years ago, and it was a great experience. I've been traveling more with friends, and last year I've been a part of a group show with local artists from San Diego, under the show named Ready Lane, and we have exhibited we're gonna exhibit in El Secur. We already exhibited in Se Arte, so that really has fueled the excitement of traveling more and exhibiting in different places, not only locally in San Diego, where I have been exhibiting extensively, but starting to travel more. Maybe my view of the studio is changing. Before, I saw the studio as my solace and my place to investigate, and then I was taking what I made in the studio and exhibited in a gallery, maybe in an alternative space. But lately I'm trying to switch from visualizing the studio as a place that is just in my home or a specific place that is secluded, and I want to start to explore the gallery or a residency or any place that I'm visiting as a true extension of the studio. I'm even visualizing the gallery and the gallery's exhibit as something that can transition and change during the time that it's open. Even a place that a solo show can be existing or a show can be existing, but have workshops going on at the same time that the show is there, investigating multiple things, and maybe the body of work can change during the show. So it's just a different perspective. So I want to explore that more about the experience and not so much about the result of the pieces. Something a little bit more fluid and experimental. It's almost like, can my studio travel? Can the gallery be an extension of my studio? And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be in another country, another state. Just not being so rigid. I think I can be rigid about my own work, and I don't realize it. So becoming aware of that, I want to explore to see how a place can influence me, how the materials of that place influence me and my curiosity and my sense of play.
What an amazing journey. I mean, it's like, your profession, some people just go to their jobs and come home, but it's like your profession and your journey, your life kind of existential journey are one thing.
Yeah, they are. I feel very lucky that I found art. Like we were talking before, is something that I never expected. I'm the first artist in my family. And it's even weird saying I'm an artist. It took me a while to carry that title. One of the most important things about being an artist is that it gave me a way to communicate. When I was growing up, I was a little shy, so I use art as my main way of communicating. And also I love to communicate things that are not easily tangible, or my brain sometimes works in layers. I'm thinking about several things at the same time instead of thinking of something linear. And I was able to express that in my work. If I tried to express it with words, and more so when it was challenging, not only as a second language, but also as a person that used to be more shy, like the visual language give me access to investigate, to communicate. So there's the journey about the existential journey, the journey about learning about myself. Becoming a professor is something that I will never think I was going to do when I was really young. So it's been an incredible journey.
Well, this has been a great interview. And I usually end with having, our talks, our speakers say something, inspirational, maybe to our students, and everybody's been doing it in English, and I know that your first language is Spanish, and I have a lot of Spanish-speaking students. Could we finish with you giving kind of an inspirational, advice to some of our maybe artists that are listening to this?
Okay. Are we doing the bilingual thing?
Yeah. I won't know what you're saying because I don't speak Spanish, but I'll follow along.
Okay. So if there's something inspiring that I can say, Lo mejor que les puedo aconsejar a cualquiera que quiera ser un artista es que disfruten ese sentido de curiosidad. Esa curiosidad por jugar con materiales, con imágenes y que nadie te va a abrir una puerta nada más que tú.